Alright, so this is a Magellan Performance Office, they call it. This comes from Office Depot. I believe it's US made. They call it Performance Collection, Realspace Performance Collection. L-shaped desk. We'll show you how this goes. Little tips and tricks. There's a lot of little things we had to kind of slow down and redo on this, so I'm going to show you the video. If you have questions, we'll go over them in the question and answer portion, and hopefully this video will help you out with this. Also, the instructions for this are available online, and you probably do want to keep the instruction book. This video is not a replacement for the instruction book, it's to act as a supplement. So one of the things about this Realspace stuff is that once we get it unboxed, figure 10-15 minutes just to unbox it, almost a half hour if you're working alone. The parts for this, everything's labeled with little sticky labels. Occasionally they come off, so do a little comparison with the instructions. This is where you want to be careful, is lay out your hardware kits, because the hardware kits are going to be in their own number sequence. And on this particular desk there's also some electrical components, there's Ethernet and power cables. Because this is a larger L-shaped desk, it's going to be a little trickier to lay out the parts if you don't have a lot of space to work in. Optimally, you would be able to lay out the wooden parts according to where they go, and when you stack them, be really careful not to stack them up against each other where, let's say, a metal drawer pull would gouge something that's going to show. First step, of course, is we're going to be putting a lot of turn lock fasteners in here, which are a little different from IKEA, but relatively industry standard in the way they work. One of the other differences is this stuff comes with glue. They expect you to glue a number of the dowel pegs in. Whether or not you actually do that is kind of a personal preference, but this is deluxe to a degree. It comes with the glue to glue the dowel pegs in, but once you do that, realize that if we're like trying to get this piece out of a room, it's never going to come back out. It's not going to come back apart if we glue all the dowel pegs. If we glue one side of each dowel peg, well, that's another way it can work. Steps 2 and 3 are basically the same thing. We're prepping the sides, and basically I and J are a pair, and then D and E I think are a pair. Or how did this go? Yeah, D and E are a pair, I and J are a pair. What's going to happen is pegs go on one end, little feet going the other way. What he's doing is he's pressing that down. There's no reason to hammer that. Just kind of set the little nails on the bottom, and they'll press in under its own weight. There'll be some additional pegs that go in here, but they go in the other pieces, and that's one of the differences with this stuff compared to, let's say, IKEA. You don't put the turn lock pieces in at the same time as the pegs. They usually go in opposite pieces. And again, they include the glue. The glue is optional, but they do include it in the kit. Because this is going in a room with a relatively small door, they may want to take it out at some point in the future. We're not gluing everything. So that's the other thing about this that's kind of nice, is they come with the drawer rails already installed, so there's no way to get that wrong. Step 4 is relatively straightforward. Mostly pegs, no turn lock fasteners on that, and it's just pegs. And then the feet, one of the things to understand is part R took 2 little feet, part S only took 1. Step 5, your kit, which has all these separated out step by step. There's another couple of pieces in bag Q1, which will go on the edge of this. They're basically L brackets for reinforcing that little section there. And on step 4, it does take some turn lock fasteners on one end of that. And then step 5, we were working on these little brace pieces. Next step coming up. Steps 6 through 8 are basically dowels. Now, when you're putting dowels in, you'll notice that some of these things, the holes for the dowels and the holes for the turn lock fasteners are the same size, but the dowel holes are not going to have the corresponding hole for the turn lock fastener. So as you go around that, if you find one of those turn lock fastener holes and you put a dowel in there, you put it in the wrong place. So just go back, check it, double check your diagram. My understanding is these manuals are also available for downloading. And so the video here is going to work in combination with the assembly manual, in order to explain a few things. If you have any questions, of course, you can ask them in the comments below. Next few steps, effectively what we're doing is we're building the two sides. Now one's wider than the other, so as you're matching up the pieces, that's basically what you're talking about. Like I think with D and E go together, and then these two go together. So you've got the wide set and a narrow set. The wide set's going to have an extra piece that gets screwed into here. Again, refer to your instructions on this. If you get this stuff out of sequence, you're going to find yourself taking it back apart. And again, I'm recommending against glue on this if you have any inkling at all that this thing is going to not be destroyed when you go to move it. On this situation, they may move from one office to the other, so we're skipping some of that so that we can take this apart more neatly in the future. Okay, so the way this goes, we're setting up the L shape here. We've got these panels. There was another piece there. This helps set everything to support the desktop. The other thing is these are called modesty panels. That this is set up, let's say, in a lobby or something like that, and so that somebody can't play like a upskirt peekaboo from the other side of the desk, right? And so you'll see how this goes. We end up with a lot of points. These are the points for the turn lock fasteners. You'll notice the additional hole. Over here you can see the additional hole for the turn lock fasteners. The others are where pegs would go. This is all getting ready for the tops to go on. So this is the next several steps in the book. And basically this is how you end up looking. Now, if you were to get really creative, let's say you wanted the wide side over here, you could swap those parts around when you're doing the initial put together, but it's kind of a hassle. This is pretty much the way this is going to go. You know, so these two pieces here, one's longer than the other, compensate for one's getting the wider desk, the other one's getting the narrower one. So the center section goes on first, and what it is we put now you'll notice some of these holes aren't used. Those are the wider ones, those are where the corresponding pegs are going to go in. The metal plates are to level the two sides and add a little load bearing capability to that when it goes on, and to keep those from tipping on one end if you were to put something heavy on the desk. Well, the trick on this is when we're turning this right side up to put it on here is to make sure that we get our L shape kind of squared, because there's no way to stick a square into this and get that right. We're just going to have to fuss and shove this around to get the pegs to go in, and once that happens, the turn lock should be in their holes also. A little fussing and moving to get this to go, but it's an important part of the assembly, and it's a two-man job, so we don't have a third guy to hold the camera. You'll get to see it done in a second here. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you with footage on each individual drawer, but we'll talk about a couple of things here. One, the drawers are screwed together. There's no pegs involved. There is a base piece in the corner of each drawer right here. It's kind of hard to see in the video. Let's see if I can show it on here. The instructions are that these go on separately. What you'll find yourself needing to do to straighten these things out. So what happens is a longer screw goes here into the wood, the shorter screw goes into that little base piece right there. But when you flip this thing over and you go to get it in the actual unit, you may find yourself loosening the two that go on the drawer front in order to make sure everything kind of lines up the way it should. And that's something to expect on it. Is you'll be wanting to kind of touch that up and deal with that kind of stuff. Over here, this is basically a sliding mechanism, computer component type stuff. Notice that there's no longer a sized compartment for like a full-size tower computer on something like this anymore. They kind of expect you to use smaller main computers or laptop. Another cool thing, I know where lighting's a little off, is you get this unit here, which has lights and basically a multi-element umbilical back there that plugs in power plus phone and Ethernet. This particular one, for whatever reason, the phone wasn't transferring through, but the rest of it seems to work. And this drawer gets a bottom support screwed in. It's a little tricky to get at the stuff. The other thing that's going to happen on this is there's some plastic pieces that are kind of optional. That's for file folder support, so you can separate out some file folders in there. Apart from that, sorry about the lighting situation, we're practically done.